Now we're good. Okay, I wanted to talk about peace because non-peace is such a big deal in the world, and you, like me, probably want there to be peace, right? Peace in our families, peace in society, peace in the world. My vocation is building. I'm a builder. That's what I do for a living. I can build houses. I sell machinery for people to build airplanes and satellites and all kinds of things like that. Building and prosperity are such beautiful ideas. And like I always say, America is such a place of builders and inventors and creators. It's such a. I was going to do a sermon on socialism versus capitalism. And that actually both people go for the same thing. They just don't know how to get there from here. So, but then I went to pray for a long time, and then I came out with this service. And I'll start with this. Anybody heard of this guy, Sir Nicholas Winton? Yes. Siapa did. Anybody else? And Sir Nicholas Winton was recently recognized, and last week he died at 106 years old. Did you know that? 106 years old. He's a British humanitarian celebrated for rescuing hundreds of children from the Nazis on the eve of the Second World War. Right? He was just Sir Nicholas Winton, who has died at age 106, saved the lives of 669 children, most of them Jewish, from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, right before the war started, before England entered the war. But his achievement long went unrecognized, and for 50 years, few of the children knew their Savior's name because he never told anybody. He did it, and then he said, well, I've done a good deed. That's it. That's all I need to do. I'm done here. Not even his wife knew. Nobody knew. Says his role as Britain's Schindler, and he didn't like that term, by the way. He didn't like it. Began shortly before Christmas 1938, when a skiing holiday he had been planning had fallen through, and he was invited to visit Prague by a schoolmaster friend who suggested that Winton join him in a most interesting assignment. Prague at the time was home to most of the 118,000 Jews in the Czech-speaking area of Czechoslovakia, and the city was in the grip of a refugee crisis. Nazi troops had occupied the Sudetenland, and thousands of Jews from the region were pouring into Prague, right? Those who had nowhere to stay were living in squalid camps, and when Winton arrived, British relief workers asked him to lend a hand. He spent only a couple of months in Prague, but became alarmed for the future of the children in the camps, for whom nothing seemed to be being done. He was worried about the kids, and he was really a stockbroker, and this sort of just happened to him, and he accepted the responsibility. So what happened next? On his own initiative, he set up an office at a dining room table in his hotel in Wenceslas Square, and early 1939 launched the Czech Kinder Transport. Word soon spread, and parents flocked to the hotel to try to persuade him to put their children on the list, desperate to get them out before the Nazis invaded. In 3 weeks, Winton compiled a list of 6,000 children who would face almost certain death under the Nazis, and established a group of sympathizers to arrange their transportation from Czechoslovakia. I wonder, how did he do it? Telephones, that's all he had. Telephones, telegrams, no computers, things like that. Anyhow, he did it. Back in London, Winton worked by day at the stock exchange, and at night returned to a small room in Hampstead that had become his operations center. Working with the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia and the Czechoslovak travel agency CDOC, he arranged transport and lobbied Western governments to accept the children. Only Britain and Sweden agreed, and then somewhat grudgingly. They didn't want to accept the refugee children. Wartime, Jewish. When the Nazis extended the control to the whole of Czechoslovakia in March 1939, Winton became so desperate at Home Office delays in issuing entry papers that he resorted to forgery. God bless him, right? We always ask, well, he was lying when he forged those papers. Is that a sin? We don't care, right? We don't care because we believe the greater good it really is important, right? In 9 months of campaigning, he arranged for 669 out of 6,000 kids he had targeted. He arranged for 669 children to get out on 8 trains from Prague to London. A small group of 15 were flown out via Sweden. As the exhausted children arrived at Liverpool Street station to be collected by the English foster parents, Winton watched from a distance. The importance of the kinder. By the way, he used his own money. He used his home, and the train ticket cost $50, and he used as much of his money as he had, and then got other money from other people. The importance of the kinder transports became clear after the war when it emerged that few of the children's parents had survived. The 9th train, the biggest transport, had been due to leave Prague on September 3rd, 1939, the day on which Britain entered the war. Within hours of the announcement, the train disappeared. Obviously, the Nazis killed all those children. Winton recalled, none of the 250 children on board was heard of again, which is an awful feeling. How tragic. So this is a picture. You can't see this picture, but this is him, and this was his picture that Winton made for him to get him out of Czechoslovakia. So this is many years later. Many years later, what happened was his wife was looking in the attic, just rummaging through things. She found this scrapbook of all these kinds of pictures. And she asked him, what happened? He said, well, when I was a young man, all these kids had to be saved, and I worked to save them. So then she went and reported this. So for 50 years, nobody knew what he did. And then his wife, whose name is Greta, by the way, figured all this stuff out and wrote to the newspapers and said, look, this is what my husband did. Here's another one. This document is identified. So there's a cute little girl. Her name is Eveline Prager. She survived the war. And here he is with other little kids. And here's all the kids getting off the train in London, right? You see all these, they're all Jewish kids who would have been killed otherwise, right? And this was interesting. He was invited, this is him, he was invited on a television show, it's kind of like, what's my line? What did you do in your life? And he explained all these things. And then they asked the audience, has anyone heard of this man Winton to stand up? All these people, all of them were the children, they had secretly contacted him. And all these children came to thank him for saving their lives. And he was overwhelmed. Obviously, he was overwhelmed. He was crying. He couldn't believe it. So all those people are alive because of that man's effort. Okay. After the outbreak of the Second World War, Winton applied successfully for registration as a conscientious objector and later served with the Red Cross. But you know what's really interesting? To begin this, he was against the war. He didn't want England to go to war. But after his experience in Czechoslovakia, he changed his mind and became a fighter pilot. He says, because when you see evil so fierce, so horrible, so evil, he thought, I don't want to just serve with the Red Cross. I want to fight the Nazis. He felt this is reasonable to do this. So in 1940, he rescinded his objections and joined the Royal Air Force. He actually became a trainer because you see he has glasses. He didn't have sharp enough vision to be a fighter pilot. So he became an officer and was training people how to fly airplanes. Anyhow, this is from he received a medal. He became Sir Winton, and this was part of his speech. He says this. There is a message which was delivered some 2,000 years ago, which should at least form the background of what we have to do in the future. I talk, of course, and it must sound rather pompous, and I excuse myself for that. I'm talking just about ordinary kindness, decency, humanity, help, and goodness, which people can aspire to, which I think are common to all religions and to all races, and it is just as common to those religious people as it is to the agnostics. So that this is something surely under which one could somehow build a better future, right? So he's saying there's universal and absolute values that we should recognize. And of course, the person 2,000 years ago, of course, was Jesus, right? He says some 2,000 years ago, of course, this was all tried. A Jewish preacher talked about ethics and how we should live at that time in the world. He said, so there is a formidable task ahead, and all I can say is that whereas the message originally never fulfilled itself, this time we have a much better means of communication, and one can only hope somehow or other goodness, kindness, truth, honor will prevail, and people will realize it's not good enough to just say, today I've done no harm. I've been a good person, but should have been able to say, I was given the opportunity today, and I did some good. Thank you very much. That was most of his speech, right? It was a very short speech. So this little girl, right, she was a teenager, is this lady here. And she was meeting him. Of course, she had grandchildren and a family, and she was very grateful. And you can just see how meaningful it was. All these people are all members, are all people that he saved, or their children, or their grandchildren that he saved.
They say out of 650 children he saved, they had 6,000 descendants today. They all wanted to meet him.
Right. The children that are descendants now number more than 6,000 persons. 6,000 persons, right? So this is sort of what, I tell this Jesus parable of the mustard seed, right? He's just one guy. Just one guy, and he ended up saving 6,000 lives. 6,000 lives because of his lifestyle, his decision to save people. There's other ones. I assume you, like me, you like this story, right? My wife and I heard it on NPR, and I thought it was significant, and I wanted to bring it to you. It's a guy who just did good. We appreciate those people, don't we? We say there is a universal standard of goodness. There's a universal standard. That's what he's saying. There's a universal standard that everybody can recognize, and that saving the lives of innocent children seems to be a universal value. Correcto? Gracias. I'm trying to change how I use words. But it seems like that's the... Now, it's not completely correct. There's many anti-Semitic people who don't think he's a hero, right? There's anti-Semitic people. There was the Nazis themselves who thought, you dirty rat, getting all those people out of here. There's people who don't think he's a hero. But if you're a reasonable person, then I think you will, whether you're a Buddhist or a Christian or even Muslim, people will think, yeah, that he did a good deed. He saved innocent children. Okay. Also, probably you don't know Japanese ambassador Chiyun Sugihara. He saved 6,000 Jews during World War II. Did you know that? He was an ambassador in Europe. I don't remember which country, but he issued visas, and all those Jewish people could go to Japan for safety. And he kept giving them, yeah. Raoul Wallenberg. You always know the story of Wallenberg, right? Wallenberg was actually killed. He was actually killed by the communists. We think he just disappeared. We don't know what happened to him. But he fought it out like a maniac, face to face with the Germans, saving Jew after Jew. He went as an ambassador from Sweden and wrote visas for people to get out of Germany or Poland or wherever he was. And the Germans shot at him, but they were afraid to kill him because he's an ambassador. Anyhow, unbelievably brave guy. Oskar Schindler. Everyone knows Oskar Schindler's story. Oskar Schindler failed at everything in the world he ever tried to do. He went bankrupt over and over again. He ended up penniless in poverty, but he saved 1,130 Jewish people. And you know what? They took up a collection, and they took care of him at the end of his life because he was utterly broke. He failed at every business deal except saving the lives of 1,000 people. And for that, he's considered, we would say that's an absolute value, right? Saving the lives of those children. Do you know this? Now, this is interesting. After the fall of the Iron Curtain, they looked at the records of the Gestapo in Poland. And they discovered that 100,000 to 250,000 German Christians, Polish Catholics, all went to the gas chambers. You know why? For hiding Jews. Like you heard of Coretta ten Boom, she was captured, tortured, but she lived. They think as many as 250,000 Polish Catholics who are protecting their Jewish neighbors, hiding them in their cellars or wherever they're hiding them, then the Germans would find them, and then they wouldn't just kill the Germans, they would kill the Polish Catholics. They knew what was going to happen to them, and they still protected their neighbors, right? We would say that that's an absolute value that everybody would respect, that type of courage, that type of self-sacrifice, that type of bravery and care for another person, right? Okay. Other types of saviors. Now, so we could see that, unfortunately, there's not a war we can save people from here, but there's other types of salvation, And that's what we're going to talk about today. Other types of salvation, right? What's easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to take up your bed and walk? So Jesus said, yeah, I could save you physically. I can give you back your legs. But what's more important, to teach you to not sin or to just let you walk around and sin? Right? He said, look, saving us from sins is likewise salvation. For example, other types of saviors. Alcoholics Anonymous saves thousands and millions of people all the time from what? Not from Germans or Nazis, or they save them from who? Themselves. Their own weakness in relationship with alcohol. Now, Oscar Schindler we think is a better hero than the local Alcoholics Anonymous guy, right? But these guys are saving people just the same as Oscar Schindler or are those guys, aren't they? I mean, the enemy, you know, the alcohol companies aren't killing the guys at Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You don't have to worry about going to a gas chamber because you saved somebody from drinking alcohol. You don't have to worry about that. Nevertheless, you are making effort, you are working hard and sacrificing to make this take place. And that's my basic premise of what peace is and what we can do, who we are, what we're supposed to be trying to accomplish, right? So we say our view of universal value is the value of a good father. This was going to be my Father's Day sermon, but we did the Day of All True Things sermon instead. So, is a good father. Why? Because fathers save their children. Fathers, good fathers, save their children. Watch. And to the fathers and mothers in the room, do the fathers and mothers in the room recognize the absolute value of fatherhood and why it's valuable and why should we ascribe to be good fathers? It isn't different. It's still salvation. Here, I'll show you why. This is President Obama, right? It's President Obama in 2008. And this is a big, giant Christian church in Chicago. He's preaching to the choir, so to speak. They really are the choir. Just kidding. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyhow, he gave a speech. Now, I did follow President Obama when he was running for the presidency and the things he said. And these are the things he said that I thought maybe there's some kind of hope. Listen to this speech. Chicago, addressing a packed congregation at one of the city's largest black churches, he was a senator then, Barack Obama, on Sunday invoked his own absent father to deliver a sharp message to African American men, saying we need fathers to realize that responsibility does not end at conception. Too many fathers are missing in action. Too many fathers are AWOL. This is the senator, Barack Obama, a politician, not a religious figure, right? So we might understand if Reverend Moon says this, Reverend Moon says these exact same things, people might not listen to them. Reverend Moon's Korean. But this is Barack Obama. Too many fathers are missing in action. Too many fathers are AWOL, missing from too many lives and too many homes, Mr. Obama said to a chorus of approving murmurs from the audience. They have abandoned their responsibilities, acting like boys instead of men. And the foundations of our families are weaker because of that. On the campaign trail, Mr. Obama has frequently returned to the topic of parenting and personal responsibility, particularly for the low-income African-American families. Speaking in Texas in February, Mr. Obama told the mostly black audience to take responsibility for the education and nutrition of their children. Now, I mention this because the crime rate in Chicago is horrible. The black murder victimization rate was approximately 34 per 100,000 in the black community. In the Hispanic community, it's 11. The white race is 3. Here's the point I'm trying to make. The difference isn't the color of your skin. It isn't poverty. It isn't any of those things. It's lack of fathers in the home. That's what Obama's saying, that this is happening because fathers aren't taking care of their kids. They're not there to keep them from gangs, to do drugs, all those different kinds of things, right? That's what he's talking about. He's addressing Chicagoans about the violence in Chicago, and he's saying the problem is fatherless homes, right? So in social science, they come to the same conclusion. That is this: lack of involved fathers has led to higher high school dropout rates, higher usage of drugs, higher rates of suicide, higher instances of teenage pregnancy, higher incarceration rates, higher instances of violent crime, higher rates of abuse and neglect, typically by live-in boyfriends who are not the biological parent, higher abortion rates, lower college graduation. Is it different that people are killed by gang violence in Chicago or by Nazis in Czechoslovakia? They're still killed, right? Their lives are still lost, right? So saving lives, whether it's in Chicago by becoming simply a good father, or in Czechoslovakia by arranging kids on trains, saving lives should be a universal and absolute value to all mankind that anybody could recognize and see. Does that make sense? Senator Barack Obama suddenly invoked his own absent father to deliver a sharp message. So this is what he's talking about. That's what he's talking about in this particular speech. Too many fathers are missing in action. Too many fathers are AWOL, missing from too many lives and too many homes. And that's why we have this giant violence problem. Giant violence problem. This is from Janet Erickson, former assistant professor of family studies at Brigham Young University, and is currently a full-time mother and freelance writer. Right? So she's a social professor, family. She says this: mothers and fathers are not interchangeable. Again, this was going to be my Father's Day sermon, but we did Day of All True Things sermon. Mothers and fathers are not interchangeable. They both add distinct benefits to the development of their children. Courts and legislatures can change legal definitions, but they cannot alter biology or psychology or the divine plan of God. She doesn't mention that. That's my addition. From infancy on, children are more likely to seek out their mothers for comfort in times of stress. And mothers are much more likely to identify, ask about, and listen to and discuss emotions with children. When kids have stress, they definitely seek their mothers, right? I want my mommy. You heard that before, right? It's okay, unless they think there's a monster behind the door, then they want their dad, right? Unless they think there's a monster or a big dog, it's dad. Hey, where's dad at? Anyhow. A mother's unique orientation toward identifying, expressing, regulating, understanding, and processing emotions is not only important for self-awareness and emotional well-being, it also lays the foundation for moral awareness, including a sense of moral conscience with the capacity to distinguish between right and wrong, right? So what this is saying is that children, human beings, by the time they become adults, how their mothers took care of them is how they begin to recognize right and wrong in relationship to other people, right? Fathers demonstrate a complementary influence, not the same, not the same. While mothers are uniquely important in developing secure identity and emotional understanding, fathers are uniquely important in developing social and relational capacity. Interestingly, this complementarity is reflected in the way mothers and fathers hold their infants. While the mother is likely to hold her infant to enable maximum contact with her face and body, the father is most likely to hold the infant in a way that gives the baby the same view of the world as the father has. This football hold orients the infant's face outward towards others. Did you know that? I was hoping some of you are holding a baby right now and we can show an example. I couldn't, so I thought, okay, I'll have a picture. See, mothers tend to hold babies like this, they say. This is how fathers tend to hold babies. Isn't that interesting? That's why it's social science, not just anecdotal evidence. That's why it's called social science. Fathers do that. They say, how come? Listen to this. While mothers are uniquely important in developing secure identity and emotional understanding, fathers are uniquely important in developing social and relational capacity. How do you relate to others? How do you socialize your children? Interestingly, this complementarity is reflected in the way mothers and fathers hold their infants. While mothers like to hold her infant and to enable maximum contact with her face and body, a father is most likely to hold the infant in a way that gives the baby the same view of the world as the father has. That's the football hold. Consider what, like this, right? That's definitely a mother how holds her baby. Fathers sort of do the same thing. Consider what social science research reveals about mothers and fathers distinctly influence children's social and emotional development. Mothers are biologically primed to provide nurturing oriented toward creating a strong attachment relationship, right? Breastfeeding, cooing, talking to babies, cuddling, keeping them warm, holding them. Dramatic increases in oxytocin and oxytocin receptors during the process of giving birth and caring for infants act like a switch to mothers. That's why young women in the room who don't have babies yet, it isn't the same thing. Taking care of somebody else's kid is not the same thing as taking care of your own child, because things happen to your body when you have a baby. When you have a baby, that's why I discovered, by the way, things happen to men too. Before my kids were born, I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to take care of my kids. Right? I thought, yeah, gosh, it's a lot of responsibility there. But as soon as my kids were born, I would hold them, take care of them. It just goes away. Don't worry. Because dramatic increases in oxytocin and oxytocin receptors during the process of giving birth and caring for infants act like a switch in mothers, turning on maternal behaviors. Right? That's why, ladies, you think you're not going to become like your mother. It's not true. You're going to be just like your mother. New moms find themselves expressing positive feelings, affectionately touching, engaging other infants, and engaging in motherese, a kind of language, right? Vocalizations. Infants' levels of oxytocin parallel their mothers, producing feelings of calm and well-being that similarly bond mother and offspring. Now listen to this. This is for dads. And all you young men who are going to become dads, listen to this. It is fathers' involvement with their children that consistently predicts how they relate to others. It's fathers who predict that. Father closeness during a child's adolescence has been identified as a key predictor of empathy in adulthood, as well as marital relationship quality and extramarital relationship quality in adulthood. In contrast, lack of father involvement has repeatedly been associated with delinquent and criminal behavior. Isn't this what Barack Obama is saying? This is what he's saying. He knows this. He knows it. For boys, the mere presence of a father in the home predicts less delinquent behavior. It's science. We know how to solve the crime problem in Chicago. It's by creating good families with good fathers. It's just another type of salvation. That's what we're talking about, salvation and peace here. Fathers, this is dad. This is how dad told kids. Fathers also experience significant physiological changes that prime them for bonding. But the same hormones elicit different types of responses. Instead of inviting security-inducing behaviors, fathers' levels of oxytocin are associated with stimulatory behaviors, like tickling and bouncing, and throwing kids up in the air, right? Fathers automatically get a kid, throw them up in the air. What else do you do with a kid, right? Right, fathers? Right, kids? Like tickling, this suggests a biological foundation for what we observe all around us. While mothers are more likely to coo and cuddle their influence, fathers are more likely to tickle and talk. Isn't that true? Fathers are more likely, that explains my behavior, right? I always want to tickle kids and play with them and walk around and show them things, right? It's natural. If you were just an evolutionist, you would say it was biological, but we would say it's divine biology. That God has put in you a desire to tickle and play with little kids. It's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. Ride them on bicycles, do all kinds of things, play games, we'll make them laugh, play ceiling ball, all kinds of things like that. These differences foreshadow more extensive complementary patterns exhibited across children's development. Okay? More significantly, fathers influence children's social and relational capacity through their play. So, mothers, your husbands are supposed to be playing with the kids. They're supposed to just be playing. It's all right. Fathers just want to play. It's okay. We are designed to play. Right? Compared to mothers, fathers are much more likely to interact through play. And that play is strongly predictive of the quality of children's peer relationships. Listen to me. This is biological. When dad's playing with the kids and they're playing games and they're wrestling around the floor and messing up the carpet and doing all kinds of things, that's designed by God to train your children to relate to other children and other people. That play is strongly predictive of the quality of children's peer relationships. In repeated studies, fathers who spend more time in positive play with their children have children with the highest peer ratings. When fathers were more responsive, patient, playful, and less coercive in their play, children showed less aggressiveness and more peer competence, and they were better liked. Is that interesting? Okay, what's the road to world peace? Good fathers playing with their children. That's simple, right? Probably is too simple for most people to accept. And we say that is exactly what the Christian culture sphere built up as the image of the good father, right? This is what Jesus said. Some Pharisees came to him to test him. They asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Haven't you read, Jesus replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and he said, for this reason man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh, so they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. Isn't that the problem of violence in inner cities? Yeah. They divorce, or they never even marry. And so fatherless children are hurt. Fatherless children are the victims of not following the idea or plan of God. Right? 1 Timothy, this is a Christian cultural sphere. Here is a trustworthy saying, whoever aspires to be a bishop desires a noble task. Now the bishop is to be above reproach. Here's what he's supposed to do to be a bishop of our church. 1, faithful to one wife. That's number 1 on the list. If you want to be a church leader, be faithful to one wife. Number 1 on the list. This is what the image of God looks like. 2, be temperate. Nice, temperate, easy. Have a sense of humor too if you can. Self-controlled. Self-controlled. Respectable. Hospitable. That is nice to people who come to visit you. Able to teach. Right? Not given to drunkenness. This is a big issue. Not given to drunkenness because alcohol causes so many problems. Causes abuse, physical abuse, so involved in so many things. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous is saving people from those problems. What's next? Not violent but gentle. Able to play with your little kids. Right? Not quarrelsome. Not a lover of money. If you're going to be a pastor, for example, being a lover of money, don't work together. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. That is, you can't beat your children into submission. That's not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to love them, play with them, talk to them, educate them, train them, right? If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must also have a good reputation with outsiders so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. Isn't that what Barack Obama is teaching? Isn't that what this means? That's exactly what this means. So we have the words of Timothy and the words of Jesus. Then if you have the words of science, it's all the same. It all comes to the same conclusion. If you want to have kids who are better liked and do well and are not coercive in play and show less aggressiveness and less violence, then what you need is to have simply good fathers, right? No drinking, kindness, family, good citizenship, being a good business owner, teacher, soldier, mechanic, good counsel for his children, right? Isn't the Christian description of manhood the same as Obama's hope for fathers, the same message? Yeah, it's the same message. It's the same message. We know exactly what to do, right? So let's recap. Fathers, good fathers, who knowingly or unknowingly. There's many Christian men who don't know anything about Timothy or anything about the Bible, but are still good fathers, right? Because it's a universal value. It's something everybody can recognize. Japanese people, Maasai warriors who never heard of Christ still could be good fathers, right? And they are, and many are great fathers, right? Follow the biblical precept for a good father, create good families that create better children, more wealth, health, and a more harmonious society according to social scientists, President Obama, and of course, Reverend Moon, right? Reverend Moon always taught world peace comes through families of love. That's how are you going to train young men to not be violent or aggressive or hurt people? Or how are you going to do that? The best way is families of true love, right? At the apex of human growth, it's not socialism or capitalism. It's familyism, and it's Godism. I mean, Godism meaning universal, whether it's the Messiahs or the Buddhists or the Christians or the Jews, it's okay. We're not saying you have to just, but the social concept of families who love each other, loyal to each other, is where society has to go in order to be peaceful, in order to have a good family. That's why Reverend Moon made 10,000 couples world peace and happiness through the ideal family. He just happened to be 40 years ahead of science and the president. Reverend Moon just happened to be many, many decades ahead of everybody else in society, like so many other kinds of things, right? And that's why he went around the world preaching to ministers. There's Hindus here, Christians, Buddhists, there's right-wingers, there's left-wingers. Everybody in this group can understand that there's a central value of true love in a family, and that true love is a real root to world peace. Right? White, black. We did every kind of race, every kind of nationality, every kind of group, every kind of age, right? So we say absolute value of man in the eyes of God and mankind is about the man who chooses of his own free will to remain loyal to one wife, who chooses to abstain from drugs and alcohol, who chooses to be a good parent, who chooses gentleness, who chooses to sacrifice his life for the sake of his family. Right? That's the absolute value and the road to world peace. Amen? Amen. God bless you. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate your patience.